Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to kick this off in about a minute. Um, just let everybody, we see that there's a great number of attendees joining. Okay, so welcome to our very first Third Thursday. It's a new series of monthly Oracle Enterprise Data Management webcasts. I'm Emma Yu, and Senior Director for EPM Product Marketing, and I'll be your moderator for today's webcast. As we go along, please type any questions that you may have along with who your question is directed towards into the Q&A panel. Our experts will be answering questions directly in the Q&A box, or we'll answer those questions in a dedicated Q&A time towards the end. So I am super excited about our guests today who have carved out time in their very busy days to share with us their knowledge and experiences in managing enterprise data as part of an overall finance or digital transformation. I think given that agility is especially critical today for organizations and the number of changes that companies must manage and respond to, especially during the pandemic, I think we're going to all find this session super timely and our guests very insightful in light of this. So I welcome our four speakers today. We have David Handy, AVP of EDM at Oracle. He will share with us about what Oracle Enterprise Data Management does. And then we'll be speaking with Kyle Schull, Director of Financial Planning and Reporting of JOANN Stores, who will talk about using EDM since going live last year. And then on to Elizabeth Farrell, Director of Financial and Reporting Systems of the Kroger company. And she'll be able to talk about her experiences for the last 2+ years in using EDM. And then finally, we'll have an opportunity to speak with Greg Briscoe of Oracle Consulting, who will be able to draw on his vast experiences with implementing Oracle EDM. So without further delay, let's first speak with David Handy, who leads North America sales for Enterprise Data Management. And I've just kind of put this slide up here, and my question for you, because some of our audience may not be super familiar with EDM, tell us what Enterprise Data Management does, or Oracle EDM.
Great. Thank you, Emma. Before we jump in and talk about what Enterprise Data Management does, let me take 1 minute and kind of give an overview of the data that Enterprise Data Management deals with. There's two types of data roughly in an organization that we're going to talk about today. I mean, there's actually three. Analytical data is one, but we're going to talk about transactional data and metadata. Most people, when they think of data, think of transactional data, an order, a line item on an order, and things like that. What Enterprise Data Management does is it governs metadata. Now, metadata, a lot of people don't really know what metadata is, but metadata is the data that models your organization. Think of it as the blueprint for your organization. Your chart of accounts is metadata. Your organizational hierarchies are metadata. Your sales territories are metadata. This is the data that describes and governs how your organization operates, and it changes all the time. And an organization's ability to change and adapt to market conditions is highly governed by how fast they can manage and govern the changes to the data which describes the organization, the metadata, right? If I want to create a new division or a new product line or a new department, I have to create the metadata that describes or is the blueprint for that new department or that new product or that new division. Enterprise Data Management, simply put, governs and manages the metadata that describes your organization, right? So that, and then it takes that data as it's governed, and it makes sure that all of the systems in your organization have the correct set of blueprints, right? Everybody needs to be operating off the same set of blueprints. Otherwise, the operation doesn't function properly. So enterprise data management makes sure that all the departments, all the different systems, all of the different reports are using the same metadata or the same blueprint for the organization. So everyone gets the same answer when they run a report. And that changes in, and then the other part of the governance is that changes in one part of the organization made by one part of the organization to the metadata don't adversely affect other parts of the organization that use that data. Again, when we're all operating off of the same blueprint and I change the shape of a room, the interior designer needs to know that that room changed. Just like if finance changes the chart of accounts and procurement is using that chart of accounts for its cost centers, procurement needs to know that those changes are happening, and in many cases needs to be involved in the decision making for those changes. So enterprise data management automates that entire process, manages that entire process, governs the entire process, and allows for auditing of that entire process. And every organization does this today. Most organizations do it manually using spreadsheets or homegrown systems. And so their processes tend to be cumbersome. They tend to be error prone. And the whole point of enterprise data management is to automate that, make it collaborative, efficient, and automatic. Now, Emma's slide here is an important slide because it talks about the value that enterprise data management brings to the organization. On the bottom half of the slide, this is where the real value comes. It's in the routine day-to-day changes to that metadata that we've been talking about that govern how your operation works. So whether I'm creating a new geo region or a new cost center or a new project, the faster and more streamlined I can make that process, the more agile my business becomes and the more efficient my business becomes. And that's the day-to-day value. And we're going to hear more about that today as the discussion goes on. The above the line, though, the interesting thing about it is it's the above the line transformational changes that get most organizations to adopt an environment like enterprise data management. We're moving to the cloud, or you're rationalizing multiple ERPs, or you have a merger and an acquisition going on, or corporate reorganizations. Those are the big things that tend to break manual processes and push organizations to automate. And of course, enterprise data management does a great job of helping those processes, but the real value comes in the day-to-day routine management changes to the data.
That's really great. What kind of receptiveness and customer adoption have you seen in the market with this?
It's been phenomenal. I mean, enterprise data management is the fastest growing of our EPM family of products. It's been growing for the last, since its introduction about 3.5, 4 years ago. It's been growing better than 100% every year. It is now a much larger business than the old on-premise data relationship management product, which it replaced, which was the best, or I should say, the largest master data solution in the marketplace in its heyday. So EDM is now larger than DRM ever was, and DRM in its heyday was the largest, most widely adopted master data management environment in the world.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing with us about what EDM does, and I think we're now gonna move over to Kyle Schultz from JOANN Fabrics, or JOANN Stores rather, and it's great to have you here, Kyle. Kyle is the Director of Financial Planning and Reporting at JOANN. Though I'm really certain the audience is familiar with JOANN, please share with us a little bit more about JOANN's business and then also what you do for JOANN.
Sure. Yeah, thanks for having me, Emma. So JOANN was founded as a single store in Cleveland, Ohio in 1943. Since then, we've grown to include over 850 stores across 49 US states. We're in every state but Hawaii. So sorry, Hawaii, maybe one day. really exciting things happened at JOANN this past year. First being we launched our IPO to take us public on the publicly traded markets, and that was successful. We're now traded on the NASDAQ. And second, really exciting thing that happened this past year is we successfully implemented Oracle EPM Cloud, and we implemented a bunch of different components of Oracle EPM. First being enterprise data management, which is what we're here to talk about today. But we also implemented financial close and consolidation, as well as enterprise planning and budgeting. And the reason we undertook this project was we realized that our financial master data management, closing consolidation, planning, including financial, strategic, workforce, the whole 9 yards when it comes to planning, and our reporting processes were really in need of a revamp. So we kind of undertook this project to really start transforming our financial processes and transforming ourselves in what we can do as a finance organization, so that we can best support the business. We migrated to Oracle EPM Cloud after being a Hyperion planning and S-based customer for many years. And yeah, it's been because of those two things, it's been a really exciting and eventful year at JOANN. In my role as Director of Financial Planning and Reporting, I oversee a few different functions at JOANN, wear a few different hats. My team is responsible for the preparation of both our internal and external financial reporting. So internal being anything that goes to company management, external being anything that goes to the street through the SEC. We're also responsible for our forward-looking financial planning and forecasting processes. And last but not least, we hold responsibility for the financial systems that support those aforementioned processes, namely Oracle EPM. And yeah, really excited to talk with you today.
Great, thank you. So tell us about, you talked about different things about EDM as you went live with other business processes, and you went live during the pandemic. How did EDM help with that during the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, like most businesses, JOANN was heavily impacted by the pandemic. We really had to change the way we work and interact as an organization. Prior to the pandemic, we really didn't have a infrastructure to work remotely, so we had to spin that up pretty quick. And what I would say about EDM and kind of that transition was because it is a cloud platform that allows users to work collaboratively in that platform, no matter where you are, in the office, remote. It really made managing our master data pretty seamless throughout that pandemic environment.
Awesome. And then before going live in August of 2021, what did things look like before for managing change and data governance for JOANN?
Yeah, we were in a pretty archaic spot, I'll admit. As mentioned earlier, we were a Hyperion planning and S-based shop, but we didn't have DRM as a tool. So we really had no dedicated master data governance tool. And really what that kind of forced us into and really limited us was it limited us to just one planning application. We really didn't have a good tool to manage our master data across multiple applications, even though we wanted multiple applications. We had ideas in our mind that we wanted to spin up, and we just never could, justify doing that without having that master data management tool. So we were limited to just one planning application. In addition, I would say, not having a dedicated master data management tool made the kind of tracking and governance of changes we were making to our master data very difficult. We were using kind of manual spreadsheets and things of that nature to track changes we were making, which is never ideal. So we really had no good visibility, to call it an audit trail to kind of changes we were making in the system. So we were in a pretty archaic spot, and I would say it really limited us in terms of what we were able to do in our planning applications because of, that lack of master data governance tool.
Okay, great. And then can you share with us just maybe some of the top benefits that you've seen, with you and your team in using enterprise data management?
Yeah, absolutely. So while we're just starting out on our journey with, EDM and EPM as a whole, having implemented this past year, we're definitely already starting to realize benefits. The first one is kind of what I was just alluding to. We're now able to spin up additional applications kind of at our will, and manage master data across those applications. So this has allowed us to spin up those applications that we dreamed of having, i.e. a dedicated consolidation application, a dedicated workforce planning application, and much, much more. We're now able to manage our master data across those different apps and do it, seamlessly. So that's been a huge benefit for us and has allowed us to, kind of push our capabilities in this space pretty far forward. We're also, I found that we're spinning up alternate hierarchies a lot quicker and a lot more efficient now. Before we were kind of hesitant to spin those up just because it was kind of an arduous process for us. But now what that's allowed us to do is kind of simplify some of the logic behind our reports and our calculation scripts, because we've been able to kind of clean things up from an alternate hierarchy perspective. Lastly, one of the things I'll say that, we're just starting to realize the benefit of, we're obviously a big fan of EDM being a cloud solution. The fact that, as new functionality is rolled out, we're going to be able to have access to that functionality, the day it's available. Instead of, where we were coming from with an on-prem solution, you go 4 or 5 years potentially without getting any new functionality, and then you go through a painful and potentially costly, upgrade. So being on that cloud environment has, really put us on a roadmap for future functionality.
Awesome. So, you obviously talked about that access to future functionality. What does your roadmap look like for using EDM with all of that access?
Yeah, so now that we've kind of stabilized after our go live, we're pretty excited about, pushing things to the next level. One of the things that we're looking at in particular that I think is really going to help with our agility as a finance organization is, I call it flipping the arrow. And what that means is, today our core ERP is feeding our financial master data into EDM, which then, we may make changes in there, spin up alternate hierarchies, enrich the data, and then push it to our various EPM applications. What I want to do is flip that arrow so that EDM is not only feeding those target applications, it's also pointing back into our core ERP. So it's that single source of the truth, kind of governing all of our master data from one spot. And there's really two benefits I think we'll get from making that change. One is just to be more nimble as the company grows and, let's say, acquires additional companies with differing ERPs. We'll be able to use EDM to kind of manage our master data across those differing ERPs and manage everything in a single source of the truth. Two, I think it'll allow us to better leverage the workflow functionalities in EDM, which is something I'm really excited to start using. So, we could have end users go into EDM, make master data record maintenance requests. They would go through a defined workflow and then, eventually make their way into the master data hierarchies. But that's one of the things we've really appreciated with EDM and the EPM applications as a whole. It's really essentially allowed us to crawl before we walk and walk before we run. And, roll out functionalities we feel ready to do so as an organization. So yeah, we're just excited to kind of keep pushing our capabilities and processes forward as an organization through the use of EDM and other EPM applications so that, we can be the best version of ourselves at JOANN here.
Awesome. It's really good to hear, your objectives and how you're really looking to the future and how you're going to make the most out of the capabilities that are offered and then also how you're using it today as well. So thanks, Kyle. It looks like, so we have a bias for Ohio today as we have another Ohio-based company, amazingly enough, and that's Kroger. And so we're going to be speaking with Elizabeth Farrell, Director of Financial and Reporting Systems at Kroger. It's great to have you here today. It's yet another household brand that needs no introduction, but if you would just describe Kroger's presence in retail and also a little bit about what you do for Kroger as the Director of Financial and Reporting Systems.
Certainly. I wasn't sure if my video had started working. Okay.
It's good. Yeah.
Yes. So Kroger, we are in, we're all across the country. We're not in every state either. But we have 60 different banners. We have spotlighted a few here that might look familiar. But we're more than just a retailer. We're more than just a grocery store because we also have the manufacturing facilities, as well as jewelry stores, and it's and over 60, distribution centers and things like that. So it's a in order to make the monster move, it's quite a big organization. And my role is to run a lot of the Oracle financial products for Kroger and for all of those different cost centers and different businesses. And we've tried to roll them all together. I know he put like what they'd gone through in the last few years, and we did just implement the Oracle Cloud, 29 different Oracle products in the last 2 years, 3 years really has been how long we've been doing it. So we're about we're the same place they are. We're a little more mature on EDM because we do feed our ledger from there, but I guess that's been our path for the last 3 years and my responsibility in it.
Wow. That is a good amount of time to be using it and understanding what the benefits and how it works. Can you tell me a bit about then just about the role of Oracle EDM as part of the larger finance transformation that Kroger underwent and what role it played?
I will say, since I've been using Oracle products in the S-base and planning and consolidation and those tool sets for probably more years than I want to discuss, but I did say as a prerequisite to going live on this that we have EDM, and that EDM was a single source of truth, and that we create the whole data governance around it. So it was critical to our success, and I felt like I wouldn't be set up for success without it. So when we set on this journey and Oracle supported it and our implementation partners, we did say all 9 segments are going to feed the rest of the enterprise from this single source of truth. So you're going to, if you want a new legal entity, and we have thousands of legal entities, and if you want a new alternate hierarchy, if you want a new way to view stuff, even tax. So if you think about, we have divisions that run each of these banners, but we also, those divisions have tax per state, or even by all where their stores are, so county. So we have alternate hierarchies that we maintain for more than just the reporting piece of it. So we have statutory pieces as well as tax, and we have thousands of alternate hierarchies in each of the segments. So driving that all into one place and then a governance process around that could be agile enough to keep up with the speed of business. I mean, they'll sign a contract, we just with a partner like Walgreens, and we need to spin up that reporting very quickly. So we have to move so we're tied into the M&A department as well. But I knew we could not go onto a single chart of accounts without EDM as our driving force behind everything. So that's kind of the role it plays in our transformation.
Yeah, that's huge. And then what about some of the other benefits that you've realized in using EDM?
I feel like and I don't know how many folks out there have tried to use a single chart of accounts for entities that report like cost accounting for our manufacturing. We have some of our banners that are actually on retail accounting. So we have different types of accounting that these folks need to report on the exact same chart of accounts. So the reports that they end up using, and when I say alternate hierarchies, I'm not just talking about we're rolling up legal entities by state, or we're rolling up accounts by all income versus your revenue versus expense or something like that. I'm also saying we are grouping the accounts by wireframe reports. When we say a wireframe, if you're not on this product, it is it's an alternate hierarchy that says, here's all the accounts that go on that report, and here's in the order they go in. And then here's all of the cost centers and departments and the intersection. And what ends up happening with how many thousands of reports we have, and that you need an income statement that looks very different to a logistics division versus a manufacturing division or a retail division, that you end up, that some of the accounting behind it, they could direct it, they could pick the wrong intersection. And so what we've done with EDM is we've used that to define all the correct intersections of all of those different hierarchies, because there's no way to get this dense of a data set into the cloud like we did on this journey without having the deep segmentation that EDM lets us manage. So we took a really long giant chart of accounts and blew it out into all these segments, and we're able to figure out what the exact intersection that goes on each report. I need to explain this better. So picture a giant spreadsheet that has spaces in it, so gaps in it, and you don't ever want data to end up in those gaps because it won't show up on a report. And so if someone or some automated system then pushes through data in those gaps, and you don't want to set up your account validation rules to stop all the data as well. You need speed. We need lots of speed. And what this lets us do is identify any of those intersections that either we need to evaluate as a governance team that says we want that data to show up on a report, or we want to make a journal entry and move that data around. And we do it. We try to look at this every single day. And EDM automatically lets us look at that giant cross-reference of reports. And I know, and I can give a report to audit that says every single piece of data that's in all of my, and we have hundreds of S-based applications, and then we have the cloud GL, and I need all of those things to tie. And I can tell audit with 100% confidence that every single piece of that data showed up on a report somewhere. And I didn't drop, I always say I poured all the beans out of one database and into another database, and I didn't drop any. And EDM gives me that confidence. Probably answered that a little long-windedly.
Awesome. So it is helping a lot with your internal audits in that regard.
I wasn't sure how to overcome it on a single chart of accounts or in a single ledger. I would have to close, and this is what we used to do, every single division separately. And I don't want to close all my divisions separately. I want to run with the speed of business. And I do not have to close every single one and say, okay, you're done with your reporting, and I tied it out. You're done with your report. I have thousands. And so being able to have everybody on one, and wages are wages, it just goes to a different cost center, and understanding that managing that big moving machine is impossible without EDM, I think.
And then kind of looking forward, because obviously you've had some time with enterprise data management. Do you have a roadmap in terms of what you see for future functionality and capabilities that you want to take advantage of?
Well, we're currently looking at moving S-Base to the cloud. So that's in our current roadmap, and that'll be pretty awesome. I want to pull together a tool, and I know EDM could drive it. I want to pull together a tool that says, I want to influence the data on this report, and you can drill and find out which cost center and which account that data is in, but it's not, then you have to go to the report. So what if we were able to organize it in a way you can say, I know that the intersection of this 41-digit text string with all these different 9 segments shows on these 5 reports, and I know I can get that if I query an EDM. So I know for this year we're going to deliver a tool that says, that lets the users actually go back and query through that. Because I do think our accounting centers, because we have over 600 people actually doing journal entries and accounting. And it would really benefit from them if someone calls them and says, my number on such and such report looks funny. And they could go in and just say, I can look and find out exactly what I did to influence that number. Because right now we need a functional person to interpret that. And I don't think it needs to be a functional person interpreting something that we know and is written in EDM. It's the size of Kroger requires a technical solution like this. But I feel like anybody could drive visibility through this tool.
Yeah. Yep. So what about do you have any suggestions for those who are just starting this journey, just kind of looking back at what you've done with it, and for those who are on the call,
Evaluating
any
whether
guidance or best practices? Yeah.
Best practices. I would really have a heart-to-heart with your business partners and your technology partners who feel that they want to not let go of their ownership of their segment. Real estate comes to mind, or like our divisions and smart numbering and things like that. And coming together and owning this together, because the speed of business, the ability for me to be able to drag and drop something and change every single report and know they're all right. And then I think that is so powerful for a company like Kroger and how big we are in our reporting. And you don't want to publish, people are making decisions. They're making decisions and they're depending on this data to be correct. And the speed of them being able to make that decision is terribly important. We learned that with COVID. We absolutely have to put the information in their hands fast enough for them to make a decision. And I can't do that if I can't drag and drop and make a change that affects everything instantly. If someone tells me their downstream system can't take it yet, EDM lets me date it. I can change it for everybody else and put a date on when they're going to digest it. And I can control when each system gets that change so that they can coordinate it and take it. I just think it's so powerful to know it's right and to push that change out consistently. And so investing in that, it's worth all the effort you would have to do to rework or try to get them on board later. Just say, no, if you can't take it right now, I'll date it for you. And we promise that you don't have to take it until your system can. So I would just say, yes, you need it. Just sort of say,
it's not clear. Yes. Great. Well, that's super interesting to hear the extensive experience you've had and all the benefits, and it's particularly keeping up with the speed of business right now. I can imagine. I can't even imagine what that might be like, and so thank you for sharing all of that. We're going to turn it over now to Greg Briscoe from Oracle Consulting. And Greg, are you there?
I think so. Emily, can you hear me?
Awesome.
Okay?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Terrific.
Great. Thanks for joining and sharing. You're currently the senior architect with Oracle Consulting, and I know you've been in the space for quite some time. And if you could share with us a bit about your experience with enterprise data management and even its predecessor, data relationship management, DRM, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. I'm definitely getting old, right? We're running up on almost 20 years now since we originally developed DRM commercially, at least. So I do go back to the team that originally was involved with that use case and developing that application. So So yeah, I appreciate being here today and having an opportunity to talk to you guys a little bit about what we've been doing. Did I lose you, Emma?
Emma, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. Yep. It had to happen at least once. So we just heard about from Kroger and JOANN about some of the use cases they've implemented. Can you tell us about a use case beyond governing financial master data that you've seen that could apply to other retailers?
Yeah, I think so. You've got a slide there for me as well, right?
Yeah. Let me share.
Yeah, this looks familiar. So yeah, this is a use case that we did recently for a major retailer, some 1,200 stores nationwide, as well as offices and warehouses. And yeah, they are undergoing a massive financial transformation process, moving ledgers. They're also going through transitions with their merchandising applications and operational systems. They're moving from some old stuff, mainframe kind of things, into cloud world. And in the process of doing that, let me see, they are somehow I lost you, Emily.
Yeah, you just cut out for the last maybe 10 seconds.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Like you said, new things all the time, right? I've not seen Zoom do that to me before. So I cut out. Where was I? Was I mumbling or something?
Nope.
Hopefully, I was talking a little bit about this data model. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
All right then. Yeah. So I was talking about this particular retailer that we were working with recently, and as I was saying, they're going in large part. They needed to do these transformations some time ago and upgrade their operational applications, their financial systems, everything really. But I think COVID and some of the things that it was putting pressure on really sent them over, kind of a drastic edge, right? So they're really going at everything. So I'm not necessarily a proponent of all that Big Bang Theory kind of stuff, but they definitely were doing a lot of things on a lot of different areas. And EDM is sort of one of those tools that we use to help us in the middle of all that, to kind of keep a little bit of sanity as it goes on. And we're talking about financial transformations, as well as in this use case, we're talking about the location management process. So as they were moving off some old mainframe applications to the cloud, in fact, they're implementing Oracle's MFCS application for retailers and to manage stores and warehouses. And as they're going through that process, they wanted to be able to have data governance, process controls, those kinds of things that we were hearing earlier applied to their world. And like in their case, a big problem that they've had is synchronization across them. I mean, 20 boundary applications to their core operational system. So it's a lot for them operationally to maintain. And so one of the number one things that we use this product for is synchronization across multiple applications in the enterprise, right? So we're, to go along with what Dave was saying, we're managing data that we're sharing across multiple systems, multiple applications and processes. And here, especially when we're talking about location or stored data, and many, applications for a retailer, obviously, everything's about, hey, what store did this happen in? Where did this money come from? Or where did this money go? That kind of stuff is all being tracked down at those levels. Where's my inventory? Where are things in my warehouses? So they've got, all sorts of things, as you can see here. I've listed out a number of different types of data that are associated with managing these warehouses and stores and offices. Consequently, their top priority, and one of their difficult use cases that they were trying to solve, was maintaining store hours across all the different platforms on the network that use it. Internet especially, being able to notify your customers that you're going to be closed because there's a nor'easter cutting across half of New England. or that, maybe you just don't have enough employees that day to open the store, which is a common thread issue for many retailers and merchants across the planet at this point. And being able to notify those systems of those store hour closures and et cetera are very important. They've got drive up hours now, curbside delivery, all sorts of things happening along that. So it ended up being a real high priority item for them. In their old world, everything was being done just by email. Literally, hey, there's a big storm over here or problem, and then some regional would send an email to a generally notified group of people, of which no one knew who did what, when, or where, and certainly no feedback or visibility to that process. And so they really were really thankful to be able to control that and be able to see, oh, I know that all of these things have been updated. I know who's done it. I know where it's been done. And so giving all that kind of clarity to that synchronization of data was real important to me. So again, these are just some of the items that were involved with this particular non-financial use case as we were talking. But you can see here that it does reach out into the financial world. We do share departments and other items, companies, for example, with the ledger. And of course, that information would be integrated also with their charts of accounts or financial applications.
So that's really interesting. I can imagine we're talking about this, just how timely and this information needs to get to the organization. How was it how was it being managed before EDM?
Well, like I said, they did not have our old on-premise DRM application, and so they didn't have any sort of centralized data management. Everything was being done manually. And so what we found out is of course, we're going across all these different applications and getting them ready to convert onto common platforms, blah, 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 was that, by and large, none of the data sources were in sync with one another. They could not, I asked many times, you guys got a solid list of all of your locations in place? And they never could really provide that. It was really something that was derived from, at least a half a dozen different applications where information was being stored, managed, or not, if you want to take it that way, because there wasn't a centralized group that was maintaining it all. And so you didn't necessarily know what was happening. So similar to product development, when you're building a widget or whatever it may be, there's a number of things that you have to go through, obviously, to research and define what that product will be, and then all your other things that go along with that, and what it takes to get it all the way out to market. And it's a similar thing here when you're building new stores, for example, or setting up new storefronts or even digital presences. There's a process that you have to go through, and it's not always that every application is going to be set up at the same time. So now you can use EDM when you deploy that to help you manage, hey, what data is going where, when, and why. And so you'll know who's making changes to it, when it's being deployed there, where it is in process, and how those steps take place. And that gives you all that visibility, that 360-degree view that most people are looking for when it comes to managing and controlling their reference data and their master data.
Great. And yeah, we definitely heard a lot about that from Elizabeth and from Kyle as well. I wanted to know if there's also some best practices that you can share for those who are starting their journey, given your experience with EDM implementations.
Yeah, best practices are always interesting to have discussions around. I think for pretty much any of the opportunities that we've seen, the most thing that, the most value that you'll get from the overall experience is if you take the time up front to rework your dimensions, your reporting segments, the numbering ranges that, that you're applying, the descriptions that you're using, all of those things, you have an opportunity when you go through this to actually reconcile it all. And what I mean by that is that when you look at the kind of reporting issues that you have, and you look at the way that you're using your data, those things need to be in a line, so that whenever I do a sort, or I'm doing a grouping, or whenever I'm looking at this data or that data, that I know that it's going to tie out or that's going to make sense, so that I'm not having to continually have to translate or regroup or reorient the data. So a real important part of the overall process up front, really making sure that, and I recommend always is that, if you can eliminate duplicate member IDs across the different domains or dimensions, some people call them segments, even, PeopleSoft people might call them chart fields. But they're at the lowest level at which we book general ledger entries to, and at which we typically report at. There will be things that aren't in the general ledger as well. But the bottom line is that all that information ends up working together. And so you need uniqueness across all those different areas to make sure that your reporting platforms don't, have issues. And if you can get them all, when you're doing this, if you can get that stuff straightened out up front, then it'll give you a much better, longer lasting, impression of how well you can do your reporting and get you to things that you probably didn't realize you could get to in previous environments that you'd worked in. So I think that's the top thing, best practice wise, that we found. Otherwise, the thing that we typically will tell everyone is don't be afraid to start your journey. Don't be afraid to get going, and it doesn't really matter where you start, just get going. Mainly we find people's use cases where, the most pain occurs, where is it hurting the most? Where am I having the most issues? And what can I do about it is where we really like to start. There might be some logical way of going about it, but normally it's better to, put the fires out and get the problems resolved, and then let the overall journey evolve and materialize as it goes forward.
Great. Appreciate that guidance, given your extensive experience in the space. So thank you to all of our guest speakers. We do now have some time for Q&A, and again, please type in your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll either address them live or within the chat within that box. And please also include who you're addressing the question to. We also have Tamer from Oracle, who will be helping with the Q&A, and then obviously our guest speakers.
Yeah, Emma, I would like to start. There's some really good questions coming through the Q&A, but if we actually had EDM Oscars today, the Oscars will go to all of these participants. We'll give Greg the implementation Oscars, Elizabeth probably the most complex EDM implementation in the world Oscar, and having done so well with EDM's full capabilities, and Kyle and you guys have done it in a very short amount of time in a very difficult situation. So you guys, you're all getting Oscars today. So, but the question that came through is how much time did the implementation take? And Elizabeth, I know you answered that question. This question is coming from Jeannie, but maybe Kyle and Greg, you can also talk about your implementation timeline. And Greg, I really love the way you said, no matter what, start your journey from somewhere, right? A journey of 1,000 miles, start with one step. So Elizabeth, let's start with you. How long did your journey take?
We started planning for this and negotiating. We didn't even know we were going to pick Oracle, right? So we started that 3 years ago, and we've been live for a year. We will close the books on our first year in Oracle Cloud in 2 weeks. And I've already put together the schedule, and it's going to be faster than we've ever closed the books for a year. So I'm exciting. It'll be exciting. But it did take us about 14 months once we picked the partner and really started diving in. But it would have been faster if we weren't changing our chart of accounts. So we're coming from a 50-year-old AS400 system that way. So our legacy, we didn't go from something like something you've heard of. We built our own homegrown, Kroger built onto Oracle, directly onto Oracle Cloud. So completely new account structure. We didn't have segmentation before. It was all it worked well, but it was time. We could no longer hire people that didn't know how to use a mouse. So function keys and black screen, and so it was time. But so I think it would have been faster if we had come from something that wasn't quite so drastic. So about 14 to 18 months, depending on, and it was exciting for the first few closes. So it's always interesting, but Oracle was right there holding our hands, which was really nice.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you mentioned 2,000 alternate hierarchies, so it's amazing amount of scope that you tackled within those 14 months.
Well, we're driving, I mean, I talked about reporting stuff, but we're also driving all of our allocation hierarchies into it. So if you think about all the different things you want to Kyle's point, all of your calc scripts and things like that you're running in Essbase and EPBCS, we drive all those to one place so that when the dude going in there and adding one account says, oh, is there a like account? You go find this, we call it a sibling account. And then every single place that account exists, you evaluate if you should add it to the other ones. And it really is faster for everything. And fewer misses, but yes, I took too long again. But.
No, it's perfect. Kyle, how about you? How long did it take you guys to get through this journey? And it's a journey, right? It never ends. You're only on one of the stops.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it all came together much quicker than I ever could have imagined. As I mentioned, we were not just implementing EDM, we were kind of throwing everything in the kitchen sink in. So we were, putting in FCCS, EPBCS, we were putting in a workforce planning application, a capital planning application. We were looking at, obviously EDM is part of that. So there was a lot going in all at once. And we also had, the pandemic to navigate through. We had our IPO we were going through. Yet somehow, some way, we got it all done in 6 months. So it was pretty remarkable. And, to anyone listening on the call, to the extent you're not going through an IPO, I'm sure you'll do it even quicker than we did. Yeah, to this day, I'm still just blown away with how quick we put it all together.
Amazing. What about you, Greg? I know store data has a lot of attribution, a lot of hierarchies as well that you're having to manage, and different data sets. How long did it take you guys?
I think roughly about 5 months, really, Tamir. We try to keep most of our life cycles, in that period of say 4 to 6 months to be able to bring up, some integrations that would make sense to move into production. So yeah, about that length of time, I think.
That's great. And who would have known that store hours data is going to be so critical, right? And you starting with feeding that to 2 systems, and now you're going to eventually, I guess, feed it into over 10 applications. So that's great. Appreciate you sharing that with us. We had one more question, and that came for Kyle. I think that's the time that we have. And maybe we'll have some other questions coming through as well. Kyle, they asked, are you thinking of other data domains? I know Greg, for example, talked about store data, but the question asked about material data. Are any alternate hierarchies or hierarchies that you want to manage for other data domains?
Yeah, nothing currently on our roadmap for non-financial kind of core financial master data, but I know it's something that the application can support, and something that we will probably be looking at eventually. Being a retailer, one of the main things we have from a master data perspective that just has an absurd amount of volume to it is our articles, right? The amount of articles we sell in our stores and online, and those have their own hierarchies associated with them. Currently, those are managed in a separate kind of database, but definitely something I think once we get in a really solid spot with our core financial master data, we'll want to look at and look at EPM as a potential use case to house that data.
That's great. Yeah. Elizabeth, anything on your end? I hear a lot of use cases around workforce data as well, and workforce hierarchies. Are you guys looking into that at all?
We are we are looking at that. That's our, so we've done 29 applications. We're looking at, so payroll is next. We've got sourcing. So sourcing, we're on a roadmap of the next things, and we have to evaluate each use case and how we're going to use it. You know, when I hear Kyle talk about item data, and I'm just like, it's a little dizzying to think about what we sell at a grocery store as well. But I've walked into a JOANN and it's a dizzying number of fabrics. So that is very interesting to think of that. But our roadmap as far as employee data, we are, that's next. I have meetings on that, and I know I'm bringing the EDM mapping folks that we used on our first on our chart. So I haven't got there yet, but it is definitely a journey, and we've just had so much success with it so far that I have a feeling it's just going to keep proliferating. But
yeah,
it's a good thing.
Yeah, we really appreciate that. Emma, then you have the last word. I think you have some next steps for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So I'm just gonna share.
We really appreciate our distinguished panel to having joined us this afternoon.
Definitely. Thank you guys for taking the time and sharing these stories. I think that they will definitely resonate with our audience. As for next steps, we want you to join the next installment of this monthly webcast. So mark it on your calendars. It's going to be Thursday, February 17th. Also participate in our customer value survey. The link, which I'm sure you won't be able to pick up in this particular presentation, but we'll send it to you in an email. Please go ahead and fill this out. It's going to help us drive innovation with Oracle EDM. And then also contact us to receive a complimentary data governance assessment. So you can contact either myself or Tamara, and we'll point you in the right direction. So that's for the next steps, and I appreciate all of our distinguished panelists for joining us today. Have a great day, and this concludes our webcast.
Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.